Alan Olson with the Montana Petroleum Association with us. Alan, good to hear from you this morning.
How are you, Aaron?
Well, God, I hate to ask you how you are doing. I'm doing all right, but man, I'll tell you, this is some crazy news with oil. I bet your phone was ringing off the hook yesterday, huh?
Well, actually, no, it wasn't. I think a lot of people are still in somewhat of a state of shock over this. I haven't put any bullets in my gun yet, but we're hanging in here. The big thing, Aaron, is we're running out of storage space for crude oil. That's the major thing that's driving down the markets. I think you hit the nail on the head in your opening on this, that with the COVID-19 pandemic and the lack of use of transportation fuels, whether it be gasoline, diesel, or jet fuel, has really put a crimp on things. And it's hitting the market across the board, whether it's the producer, the transporter, or the refineries.
Well, and really this all started even before the coronavirus, or separate from the coronavirus, but at the same time where Putin in Russia was deliberately trying to drive down the price of oil. He got into that tiff with Saudi Arabia. Then, Trump weighed in and seemed to help that situation. But now with so many planes not flying, so many people not driving, and the coronavirus economic impacts, yeah, that's just piled on. So I'd imagine that's probably why the shock is still there, because this is just a continuation of a downward drive, right?
Well, and it is. The oil's been used as a political weapon more than once. We can go back to the 70s when OPEC first formed up, and they put an oil embargo on the United States. You go back into the 80s, and between the U.S. and the Saudis, there again, it was to bring the Russians in line. And the current spat between the Saudis and the Russians, well, it's kind of somewhat settled, but it came too late.
Yeah. So when the price of oil drops down to negative $37 a barrel, explain to folks how there can be a negative price of oil, and what does that mean? Does that mean that they're basically paying folks to take the oil and store it somewhere?
Well, I think that look at it as more like the offer price. I think what we're going to be seeing, and we're definitely seeing in Montana, a lot of producers are shutting in wells. You're not going to sell oil at a negative price. I mean, the economics even a week ago were pretty tight on whether or not an operator is going to continue producing his wells. But I think we're going to see a downturn in production. The thing that worries me the most is we start getting on this seesaw of high prices, low prices, high prices. Things can get out of whack pretty quick. I would imagine towards the end of this year we'll see a fairly decent recovery, I guess if I can call it a recovery in oil prices as production declines. But this has the potential of creating some tremendous price increases the longer that this goes on.
Because while the price may be cheap now, if they drive the American energy producers out of the markets, out of business, that's going to give the Russians, the Saudis, OPEC more power down the road to basically charge whatever the heck they want, right?
Well, and then it's not just the Russians and the Saudis. If production drops and all of a sudden we have a shortage, that there again will drive the price.
Yeah.
There's Cushing. That's the other thing that gets us, Aaron, is our oil markets are landlocked. When you get like Brent crude, that's priced different. You'll notice if you saw on there, Brent crude never went negative. It was still in the mid-20s.
All right, so here's some of the questions I have for Alan Olson with the Montana Petroleum Association. If the price was negative $37 on the WTI when it comes to the price of oil yesterday, negative $37. Well, what's the price, say, for oil in Baker, Montana, or Shelby, Montana? Plus, how does all of this impact our refineries? I've got several beautiful oil refineries that I can see right outside my window right now, not to mention some train cars here as well. And how fast can the American producers get back up and running once the price gets back up to levels that are economical? We'll talk about all that more here. Alan Olson with the Montana Petroleum Association on with us here. Alan, maybe let's start with the refineries if we can, because I know there's a lot of great jobs here in Montana, a lot of great men and women that work at these refineries here in the state. Great Falls and Billings. How is this oversupply of oil and just the lower demand for fuel impacting our refineries?
Well, Aaron, I think everything's going to have a certain amount of effect on the refineries. Nationwide, I think we could probably look for a turn down in production by as much as 65%, but that's nationwide. The refineries in Montana are sitting in a little bit different position that I can see. The big refineries down on the Gulf Coast, I mean, their oil goes all over the eastern part of the United States. They're mega refineries. They refine in excess of 100,000 barrels a day. The refineries we have in Montana, the three in Yellowstone County, have refining capacity of about 60,000 barrels a day, and the one in Great Falls about 25,000 barrels a day. But they serve a different market. I'm not going to say that they're going to be running to capacity. There again, the downturn is hit in Montana as well. But I have every anticipation that they'll continue to run.
So those jobs are largely safe then at these Montana refineries. Is probably the message there then, that there's more optimism with the refineries in Montana than say elsewhere like the Gulf Coast?
Well, I'm definitely more optimistic about that. That's not to say that they won't be ramping down production. Just like the crude oil supplies, when the storage tanks get full, there's no place to go with it. Causes a crash in the crude oil markets. Same thing with refined products. And we just went through this here trying to get and we did get a waiver from the state of Montana and the EPA on the winter fuel blends because the drop in usage. Our refineries and our fuel systems had a tremendous amount of winter blend fuel in the system, and that needs to go before we can put the summer blends in the system. So as long as we've got capacity, that's what will determine the operations of the refineries.
Interesting. So if the price got down to negative $37 a barrel on the WTI yesterday, how low did the prices go in, say, for folks in Baker, Montana, or in north central Montana like Shelby?
Well, southern Montana, it hasn't been that great down there either. Day before yesterday, it was down to about $4 a barrel. Even going back to the first of last week, it was only $8.50 a barrel. But you get over in the North Dakota southern area, which includes the area down around Baker, that dropped from $8.75 a barrel down to a negative $47.25. The Shelby area a couple days ago was running about $10 a barrel. I don't have numbers today for the Shelby Cut Bank area, but I imagine that's gone negative as well.
Wow! So negative 37 down in Texas or in the WTI, but then here in Montana, negative 47 and upward and downwards, I guess would be the correct way. That's crazy. Let's see, and then anything else to add on that point there, Alan Olson?
Well, there again, it's and I've said it numerous times before, the cure for low prices is low prices. And I fully anticipate for production nationwide, well, not only in the U.S., but also Canada, to be making some serious corrections in production. And it'll take a couple months, but I think we'll see the price starting to come back up. I'm fairly optimistic. I think by the first quarter of next year, we could see oil back up in the mid 30s, maybe even as high as $40 a barrel.
Interesting.
By the first quarter.
Back to Alan Olson with the Montana Petroleum Association joining us live right now. So, Alan, you said by the first quarter of next year you expect the price to rebound up there when it comes to oil. How fast can these American producers get back up and running? Because it seems like Putin was doing a short-term play to push U.S. producers out of the market. But it seems like these Bakken producers, they've increased their efficiency to where they can get back into the game a lot faster than they used to be able to. How fast can the American producer get back into the game here?
There again, Aaron, it's going to depend on the economics. If we could get $60 oil, things would be really sweet. We've got a number of operators that are going to be hurting financially when this is done. There's a lot of debt. There are companies filing bankruptcy, but it wouldn't take long to get things back up into production. A lot of these wells, these shale wells, are going to have to produce them somewhat to kind of keep things opened up. Makes it a lot easier to get them back online. The vertical production. Once we get a little confidence in the market, it wouldn't take much to bring them back online. But I'd say all in all, we can be back up into full swing within a year.
That's a remarkable testament to the innovation that's out there. These petroleum engineers, these chemical engineers, the roughnecks out there, the folks, and a lot of Montanans who are leading the front in that American energy renaissance that we saw over the last decade. So we'll be cheering them on as they fight to get back into the fight here. Alan Olson with the Montana Petroleum Association, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Likewise, Aaron. Take care.